Hi, welcome to Exploring the Illusion of Free Will. My name is George Ortega, and Anel, my co-host, isn't here again this week, but he will be here next week, so that's good. The topic of today's show is we can never, ever have a free will, okay? And it's true. That's why I'm doing this. Okay. Um, and the reason I say this is because, there's some religious leaders, some like yogis, some spiritual leaders that will say, well, we don't have free will, but if we evolve our consciousness, if we become enlightened, self-actualized, whatever it is, then we can have a free will. And the fact is, no, we can't. And that's what this show is going to be about. All right, so before we get into that, I want to explain, as I always do, what people mean when they say we have a free will, and why the show is important, why I'm doing this show. Okay, basically, the concept of free will is the idea that we human beings, whenever we do whatever we do, whenever we think whatever we think, that it's completely up to us. That nothing that we're not in control of or unaware of is responsible for any part of it, that it's completely our decision. That's so basically if we do anything right, we're completely credit worthy. If we do anything wrong, we're fundamentally blameworthy, responsible. Okay, that's the basic belief. Another way of understanding it is that, just basically that we can just decide what we do, not being guided or influenced by, for example, our genetics, and our personality is 50% genetic, or our environment, how we're raised and stuff. So anyway, that's the belief, and I'll go into why we don't have a free will, why we never have free will after that. But in terms of significance, you can't blame us because we don't have a free will, but this topic is supremely important. It defines who we are as human beings. If we're going around thinking that we have a free will and other people have free will, we're going to go around blaming ourselves and others for pretty much anything, everything. It's not good. It's wrong. It's completely unintelligent. And again, I can't blame us for it because since we don't have a free will, it's the universe that made us think we have a free will. It's not the first time the universe has done this. It made us think the world was flat for a while. It made us think that that the sun revolved around us rather than vice versa. It makes us get things wrong, sometimes for millennia, for centuries, and then, as with this show, it's making us finally get it right. And the importance of this show is this debate over whether we have a free will or not has been going on for hundreds of years, for over 1,000 years, really. St. Augustine in 580 A.D. coined the term free will. Okay, before that, it's not in the Bible. So, but the problem is basically it's kind of like a fundamental part of religion, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and whatever, Buddhism to a certain extent, but it's really not talked about there. It's kind of like a given, and it's pretty much in academia where the debate has been going on, and nobody ever hears about it, and some philosophers and psychologists say that, well, it's a very complex question and it just hasn't been solved yet. That is absolute nonsense. It was solved centuries ago. Spinoza solved it. Jonathan Edwards solved it. Many philosophers in the past solved it. Baron de Holbach is a very good example. But it just that their solution just hasn't been accepted by academians, who kind of as a result of what we're referred to as motivated reasoning, we're kind of hardwired to not be able to accept things that go counter to how we were raised, how we were, our certain beliefs that we value in a certain way. They may be completely wrong and harmful, but we value them. Anyway, so like the significance of this show is like for the first time in history, this topic is moving from academia where nobody ever hears about it and they're just like so clueless about it in so many ways, to the mainstream, to, as my co-host when he's here says, to Main Street, to the public spotlight. And a brief history about how this happened. I'm tired. I just did 2 shows. I started a meetup in Manhattan in April 7th, 2010. Before that meetup, you didn't hear. There were maybe a few articles between, let's say, 2004 and 2010 in major, magazines, newspapers about it, but very, very few. Okay, after that meetup started, and I based it, I live here in White Plains, but I based it in Manhattan purposely because I knew that a meetup in Manhattan would, like, anytime, like, anybody's, like, looking for a meetup in Manhattan, and you got to understand, like, the meetups in Manhattan, it's not just people who live in Manhattan that attend them. It's like people in the entire city. It's not just people. It's like me. I don't live in the city. I live in White Plains. I attend Manhattan meetups. So you've got 22 million people in the New York metropolitan area, sifting a lot of times for meetups in Manhattan. So my strategy was, all right, I'll base it in Manhattan so that, like, the listing, my Exploring the Illusion of Free Will meetup, it was first called the Predetermined Society Busting the Free Will Myth back then. And it's got like about 181 members now. It's cool. We meet every month. But like my strategy was, like, you get it up there, you get a lot of people seeing, they may not join the group, they may not look into it anymore, but every time they're looking for a meetup based in Manhattan, they will see Exploring the Illusion of Free Will. Free will is an illusion. No, it's not. And they'll start talking about it. I wanted to create a buzz about it, okay? So like that happened. Now this show, certainly, Westchester is a pretty important community. We're like, about 20, 25 miles from Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan, and there's a lot of people who really are responsible for a lot that goes on in the world who live in Westchester. Some White Plains. What's his name? Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, was born in White Plains. So we're fortunate to be in like this kind of like this suburban community of Manhattan, of New York City, where a lot of people choose to live, who just like have influential, important jobs in the city. So anyway, so like between this show and then like, I feel like promoting the show. Right, I'll get to the topic, but so like, we're doing my, we created this show, and this show actually started with a member of the meetup, this guy Nomi, who did like about 8 episodes with me, and then this other guy, Anel, who from the group, he told me that he had, started training to create a public access, to produce a public access television show in Manhattan. Now, Manhattan, this White Plains is about 57,000 people, and through FiOS Channel 45, it also reaches certain neighboring communities, parts of them, Scarsdale, Ardsley, Tarrytown, etc. But Manhattan, the Manhattan audience is it's about 500,000, and from their website they have a reach, I think, to about 3 million also. I'm not sure how that worked. I got to find out about that. But anyway, so like, so I convinced NL to do a show on free will, and like every other week or so we have a live call-in show on Manhattan's cable access neighborhood network station called MNN. Okay, it's on every Wednesday. It's on actually at 11 p.m. And the cool thing is, like, the weeks that we're not doing the live call-in, we present an episode from this show. So this show gets seen by a lot of people in Manhattan also. So anyway, that's the reason, like, this is so important. And these 2 shows and the meetup, the work that Anel and I are doing now has been very, very important to moving. Ultimately what happens, like in 2010, you had a bunch of articles, maybe like a dozen or so coming out, in major magazines, newspapers. Scientific, New Scientist, the British Science Weekly, came out with a cover story in 2000. No, that was 2011, but still. the first time ever, Scientific American Mind came out with this cover story 2012. So basically, the topic has moved from academia, where it's languished or nobody ever heard about it, to mainstream. And what happened? What happened? Okay, in 2011 it's going along well. A lot of promotion and stuff. And then the Arab Spring happened, and so all the attention turned to that. And then the interest in free will kind of waned a bit. And then one of the main reasons for doing the show, or one of the things that I wanted to happen, not just from the show but from the meetup, was that I wanted a best-selling author to publish a book on this. And that's exactly what happened. Sam Harris, who's a neuroscientist, he published 3 books in the past that were New York Times bestsellers. In March of 2010, he published a book called Free Will. It's a small book, whatever, but it's a major achievement. And before his book, the only book that was not self-published, that actually there were no books. You'd have to go back decades to have a book that is refuting free will that wasn't self-published. Because I published a book a few months before Harris, but it was self-published, and my co-host Anel published his book. Whatever, there's a few others. But anyway, so the topic's out there. I can't believe I've gone through half the show. I haven't gotten to the topic. I don't care. I'm tired. I don't have a free will. You can't blame me. All right. So let's get to this. Now, I want to first I want to explain why we don't have a free will. Okay. The basic reason is because everything has a cause. And for those of us who believe that not everything has a cause, that makes things even worse for free will, because if certain things don't have causes, then you can't attribute them to anything. You can't attribute them to human beings, so you can't attribute them to our will. So essentially everything has a cause. And that means that every decision we make has a cause, and the cause always precedes, the effect. So if the decision is the effect, it's the effect of the cause. And then you have that cause that causes our decision has a cause, because everything has to have a cause, and that cause has a cause, and these causes are going back in time, and they go back moment by moment to the Big Bang. The best way to understand causality, because it's the most general comprehensive, is the cause of anything that happens is the state of the universe, prior to whatever happened, because that's the most, the state of the universe is the most comprehensive description of everything, because it is everything. All right, so that's why we don't have a free will. All right. Now, some people make the claim that all right, we don't have free will now, but if we become enlightened, we can develop this power to have a free will. We can develop the power to just like of our own accord override all our genetics, override all our conditioning, override this fundamental universal principle of causality, override the fact that our unconscious is making all our decisions. I did a show on this a couple of episodes ago, and somehow gain a free will. No, it's impossible. Causality, we might be, what is it to become enlightened? To know more? To kind of understand the universe more? To have our, in terms of physiology, to have chi or ki energy circulating more? I mean, very cool things. Enlightenment, let me tell you something. I meditate a lot. Recently I have been meditating about 8-10 hours a day, which is very cool, because I've been thinking, I've been living in my head for a long time with the show and stuff, thoughts and all. And so basically when I meditate, I just kind of clear myself of all that, and it's very cool. So yeah, you can develop, enlightenment, becoming more, is something that I completely believe in. It's an amazing, way of developing our kind of fullest potential as a human being. But it's never ever, it can't possibly give us a free will. Again, because causality would apply to whatever decision any kind of enlightened person would make. Okay, and some people say that there's a thing that says that well, now, all right. Now, some people say that, well, no, there's a question of whether or not we can potentially have a free will in the afterlife. And this is a very interesting question because, like, a lot of us believe that, when we're good, if we're good, when we die, we go to a place called heaven. And in heaven, everyone's good and everyone's blissed out. I don't know what they do up there, but everybody's happy and everybody's good. Now think about it. Like, if you ask somebody who was like raised in religion, who really believes in religion, if we have a free will, they'll say here on earth, no. But if you ask them, do we have a free will? In other words, if we're up in heaven, do we have the free will to sin, to make mistakes, to do evil? And they would say no. So yeah, the general understanding is that, in the afterlife, assuming there is one, assuming, let's say, there's a heaven, a complete bliss, then no, we wouldn't have a free will there either, because we would be completely, because by definition it's heaven, by definition it's bliss. Some people say, it's interesting, some people say, well, you can't have a heaven on earth because that would be boring, you can't be completely happy. When I did a show before this, the happiness show, it's because happiness is the point of everything, and I used to say that, happiness is great, you should strive to be happy all the time. People say, like, if you're happy all the time, that's going to get boring. Well, no, because, like, when this concept of heaven is that, like, when you get up to heaven, you don't get bored with it. It's like eternal bliss. You don't talk to any kind of like a priest or a rabbi. You're not going to hear him say no, like, heaven isn't completely blissful because, like, that would be boring. So the idea is some people can understand how complete eternal bliss could exist in heaven, and not be boring, but they have difficulty translating that same principle and rationale to here on earth, whatever. But anyway, so again, if we're completely blissed out and completely angelically good in heaven, then no, that wouldn't be free will either. Okay, did we ever have a free will? Because we can never have a free will from now into the future. Did we ever have a free will? Not really. That kind of depends on how you define us. We're all right. God is everything. I mean, theologically, God is everything. If you want to talk in terms of science, the universe is everything. All right. To me, God and the universe are synonymous. So if God is everything, and if the universe is everything, then we're part of God. We're part of the universe. We are a universe in a sense. And you have to understand that 13.7 billion years ago, at the time of the Big Bang, the universe was condensed to a singularity the size of about a pea. Imagine that, because there's hundreds of billions of galaxies in the universe, each containing hundreds of billions of stars, and presumably a lot of planets, and all this stuff was condensed to, it's mind-boggling, it's completely. But anyway, we were part of that also. So in a certain sense, you could say that we are a part of God. Okay, so you might conjecture that, at the moment of the Big Bang, that we were part of that. Now that gets into a kind of like a logical kind of like a conundrum, because then, the Big Bang is really like what we understand to be the beginning of our universe, but logic kind of like, causes us to ask, well, what came before that? I mean, you can't have something coming from nothing, at least in science. It's prohibited by certain conservation laws, like conservation of mass energy, conservation of momentum. You can't either create or destroy matter. So from that understanding, the universe must always have existed. So did we ever have a free will? I don't know. I can't answer that. I think as human beings, the form we are now, I think we have to say that we didn't. We never did actually have a free will. And the reason I'm saying that is, like, for example, let's say I define myself as the universe, okay, or God, whatever, and my hand as a human being. So my hand can do something, right? And it's part of the body, it's part of me, but it's not the part of me that decides anything. It has, it's deciding what's, in my mind, whatever, what I make it decide. And naturally, because I don't have a free will, what I'm deciding is like the result of this causal chain of cause and effect that goes back to the Big Bang and all that. But basically what I'm saying is like, we are God because everything is God. We are universe because everything is a universe. We're just not that part of the universe as human beings that is in control of anything. We're not in control of anything. That's what this whole show is about. I mean, that's what the whole free will, which is amazing. It's mind-boggling. So in that sense, I don't think we ever really did have a free will as human beings. But like, since you can neither create nor destroy matter, the atoms, the particles in our bodies, in our minds, were all always existed, or existed at least at the time of the Big Bang. So in that sense, you could say that if there was like a determining kind of like an act or God that just set everything in motion, because you have to understand, not even God at the present moment doesn't have a free will. If God is let's say, for example, all-knowing, even if God is everything, if God was the universe at the time of the Big Bang, and cause and effect, the causal progression of the universe state by state leads to this, then God today is equally compelled as everyone else. God doesn't have a free will either. Another way of explaining this is if God is omniscient, all-knowing, you have to think that if God is everything, God has to know everything. So if God knew at the time of the Big Bang what God would be doing today, then obviously he can't have a free will today. Whether God had a free will at the time of the Big Bang is, again, a bit nebulous of a question. So, all right, so the thing is, we can never have a free will. And, that's really like, it doesn't really matter because the way we've been conditioned, the way we're made, who we really most fundamentally are, is hedonic creatures. All we really care about is seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. That's what we do. That's what life is about. Okay? And a lot of times we care about morality because, like, for example, as John Locke, this British philosopher, explained, goodness is what creates happiness. So if goodness creates happiness, then evil creates unhappiness. So it's wise to be good, to seek pleasure and happiness. So the idea is, the idea is I just lost my train of thought, and because I'm tired. I got 4 minutes to go, and that's the thing. If I had a free will, I wouldn't have lost my train of thought. But anyway, so what? I don't know. So. All right. Now, some people say that, no, I don't want to go with that. All right. I don't know. I'm going to do a commercial because I think you understand how I got it again. Okay, it came to me. All right. It doesn't matter that we don't have a free will because the only thing we really care about is happiness and pleasure. And so, as long it seems that if we die that we go to heaven, then that everything turns out well. Or another way of looking at this is like if we are as a species designed to seek pleasure and avoid pain, you would think that despite some mistakes we're going through, like climate change and our wars and all that stuff that we're going through now, you would seem to think that generation after generation that we would be getting better at this. So if we're still around a few thousand years from now, I guarantee you everybody on this planet is going to be blissed out because the science of psychology that's been studying happiness has only been around for 50 years, and we've only begun to implement the findings of this field. So basically what I'm trying to say is all right, the reality is we don't have a free will. But knowing this does not have to limit your happiness. Basically what happens is we still can be, incredibly, completely happy if we want. Well, I don't know about completely happy, but we can be very, very happy understanding that we don't have a free will. And the idea is when good things happen, instead of attributing them to ourselves and others, we attribute them to God or the universe. But we're grateful that they happened. We enjoy them. So, so again, it's not, I mean, you can't help but think that, well, if we had a free will, being the hedonic, pleasure-seeking, pain-avoiding creatures that we are, if we really had a free will, we would be completely blissed out right now, because who of their free will would freely choose to think any kind of negative thought, freely choose to feel any kind of negative feeling? We wouldn't. I mean, I certainly wouldn't. That's a powerful way of understanding how we don't have a free will. So, we have to accept that we don't have a free will. We can never, ever, 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 ever have a free will, going on to the future. But, the hope and the expectation is that eventually, either like if we have a soul and we die, that basically like there is a kind of like a possibility for bliss. And who knows, maybe a lot of us don't even, think about that or require that. But the idea is like, yeah, understanding that we can never have a free will doesn't have to be kind of like a negative thing. Even though, it would be great if we had a free will, we can still kind of like achieve a kind of like a blissful state without it some ways. All right, I'm out of stuff. We've got a Manhattan show. The No Free Will, channel 56 on MNN, Manhattan's Neighborhood Network station. Every Wednesday night at 11 o'clock. It's a live call-in show every week or two, or every other week or so, depending on what my producer decides. And if we're not live there, then we're showing this show there. We've got a meetup, the Exploring the Illusion of Free Will meetup that meets every first Saturday of the month in Manhattan. Okay, and then I just started a new meetup in White Plains. It's actually, the first meeting is tonight at Barnes & Noble, 8 p.m. It's called... What is it called? It's called Outgrowing the Free Will Fairy Tale. I wanted to give it kind of like an edgy title, and we've got like about 2 or 3 or 4 people joining us tonight. So anyway, I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you again next time on Exploring the Illusion of Free Will.